Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurial Monday, sponsored by the Metro New York chapter of National Black MBA and bccelerator, advancing Black entrepreneurship. Welcome back. We took some time off to get retooled. The first half of the year for many of you has been very challenging, and time for us to take some time to reflect on our first half of the year. As we get into this program today, we're going to jump into programming that's going to touch on your needs. As you being the business owner, the entrepreneur that you are, there are many challenges that you face, and one of them focuses on the law. And when I say law, in terms of legal support for your small business. So my name is Norville Barrington. I'm the VP of Communication from National Black MBA Metro New York chapter. I'm also the founder of bccelerator, advancing Black entrepreneurship, where we take your business plan and make it into a financial and operational document to provide success, guidance, and bring you ultimately profits. Today's guest, which I'm going to introduce in a couple moments, is going to bring some of her legal expertise with her years of experience, not only in the corporate area, but more importantly, how does this relate to small businesses, and how does this relate to opportunities for you to understand how you can legally protect yourself at a time such as this. At this time, I have the opportunity to introduce the president of the Metro New York chapter, Andrew Hamilton, who's going to give his remarks. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Hope everyone can hear me very well. Welcome to another Entrepreneurial Mondays. Once again, thanks you to Norville Barrington and the business development team, Zoe and Latoya, for creating this opportunity for small businesses to be highlighted in our programming, but more or less give us an opportunity for our members to pursue their small business careers as they move forward. With COVID has provided and presented numerous challenges, but at the same time has presented us numerous jewels as far as communication and moving our agenda forward. As we proceed through the rest of the year, we will be looking to really show how to live post-COVID. I think when you enter storm, you worry about the storm because you currently want to batten down the hatches, but you will get through the storm. So the other side of the storm is post-COVID. And we want to make sure that you, I, and we are always prepared for when we go out back to the work world or pursue our own personal professional goals, that we are properly prepared to execute, succeed, and be the very best we could be. So I'm very excited for this event. This is a very talented attorney and a very talented person. So I'm very glad she said yes. And in addition to that, we will also hosting Rewriting this Thursday. I'll have phenomenal guests from Credit Suisse and Merrill Lynch. They're real good colleagues of mine that have presented some great ideas, and be moderated by a good friend of mine from a great, phenomenal reporter here in the New York area, Ms. Julie Walker. So I'm really looking forward to the Thursday as well. But President is present, today is today, and I'm really looking forward to Entrepreneurial Mondays. Thank you, Norville, for having me.
Thank you, Andrew, for your remarks, and wishing you all the best in this difficult time as well, Andrew. We are going to get started shortly. Now, just to let you know, just set the tone for Entrepreneurial Mondays. This year in COVID, we took an opportunity to focus on a series that would allow you, the entrepreneur, to receive resources that are needed in order for you to advance and grow your business. Some of you are starting your businesses right now, and some of you are looking to grow your business. So we understand that everyone is in different places, but ultimately our goal is to ensure that we provide the resources that you need in order to grow, whether that is from a insurance perspective, loans, opportunities for you to grow in terms of forming your business. Over the last couple months, we've had different various speakers that have kind of honed in on various areas, whether it was related to COVID, whether it's how to go ahead and start your business and for you to get over the hump, whether it is about how to actually look at licensing in new areas for entrepreneurial vendors. When you look at opportunities with the city, we also had various speakers who spoke to how to operate, whether it is in New York City, whether it's New Jersey, the state, or whether it's New York State as a whole. We also looked at it from a federal level as well. We looked at opportunities for growth for entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to women, which I think is very important. We've looked at areas from golf in terms of opportunities for economic development, in terms of supply diversity. We also looked at from a real estate perspective. We also had entrepreneurs who came in and spoke about their journey from corporate into entrepreneurship as well. And this is just a taste of what you're going to see from the National Black MBA Metro New York chapter and bccelerator going forward. Last time you saw us, you also, many of you attended our business symposium, which was dedicated to business needs as it relates to NWBE opportunities as budgets are being done now, and you're now eligible for state federal contracting as an MWBE certified vendor. Today's journey is going to walk you through the opportunities as relates to how to legally protect yourself. So I'm here with the founder attorney, let me see here. Toneille Raglan. Sorry about that. Toneille Raglan is a corporate lawyer with approximately about 12 years of experience in the field. She has her own law firm, and her mission is to provide legal services to entrepreneurs, business owners, and early stage established companies with more of a personal touch, which is very important. Prior to founding her firm, she led counsel for 2 businesses at a global publicly traded investment firm in New York City. She originally started her career at the AM Law 100 law firm in New York City. She received her JD at Washington University in St. Louis of Law, and she graduated with the Order of Barristers, a faculty selected award, which kind of highlights the excellence of oral and written advocacy, which she received many accolades in law school, which is very important as you're looking to build your career. As her undergrad career, she was cum laude at Ithaca College with a BA in economics. As we see today, economics is driving a lot of decisions, and we have an attorney who understands the concepts of economics and what it relates to in law. She also has led several run organizations from research and also a teacher assistant in the Department of Economics. Her law firm, which is located in New York City, provides legal services to entrepreneurs, business owners, early stage developers. And again, as a founding attorney, she works the day-to-day challenges that businesses face. What that means for you is that she's going to be in the trenches with you and understands how you should be looking at your business going forward, not only from a strategic level, but how it connects from an economic standpoint. We also understand that running a business is very difficult. As an entrepreneur herself, she understands that it's very time consuming. So here's some of the opportunities from a legal aspect and also technical aspect of how you can accelerate your business going forward. And one thing that you know, that she's a trusted advisor as a partner with National Black MBA Metro New York chapter. She strives to make legal simpler, a more holistic and approachable strategy that will allow you, the client, to feel more as a partner in this journey. So without further ado, I want to bring up our resident attorney, Toneille Raglan. There we go.
Hi, Norville.
How are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you doing today? Most important.
I'm doing. Thank you so much for your time, and we understand that today is a very important day, not only for people in the audience, but also, around the world. We're going through a global pandemic. There's a lot of things that happen. We'll touch on COVID another time. So I want to give you an opportunity for our audience to understand who you are and why. And what's the picture in the background there? So a young lady in the background there. What's going on behind you over there?
So that's a beautiful little Black girl who is watering flowers. And I think that's very significant for us, if there are any Black women on this call, to know that you can always sow the seeds, water the flowers, and then it will bloom. And I truly believe that you absolutely can accomplish anything you desire once you sow those seeds. So a little bit about me, and in terms of how I started this entrepreneurial journey. So from very early in my career, I knew that I wanted to start my own business. A few years ago, I decided to start putting things in place in order to make the leap and to branch out on my own. I do have other business ventures, but along the way, when folks realized that I was a lawyer, they kept asking for legal services, especially business owners. And I figured as much that I would be doing a disservice to those business owners if I didn't also have my own legal practice. So basically, my legal practice came to me while I was working in corporate law. So I started my own business. I represent business owners, mainly entrepreneurs, some established businesses. And I realized along the way that business owners thought that legal was difficult and complicated, and it is not. It is not complicated. Once you have someone who is going to walk you through the process, it's something that you can absolutely get through, and that's how I work with my clients.
Great. Now, we're going to get into a couple questions here, a number of questions. Now, we've had a number of emails throughout the week. So we kind of broke it down into three different ways, three different topics here. We have most of the questions here kind of focused on business formation, business identity formation. We also have a contract and agreement section. And we also have IP questions. There's some also miscellaneous questions that we have here I think are pretty interesting. So we'll jump into the first question here. So from a business identity formation perspective, which is the best, to begin an LLC, to begin an S Corp, or to begin an LLC and then switch into an S Corp? What are some of the considerations that people need to factor in when looking at changing and also starting as well?
So that's a great question, whoever asked that question. So basically, you need to take a step back first and ask yourself, why exactly am I starting this business? So if you're starting a business to take care of yourself and or your family, and you may have a few other owners, then perhaps an LLC makes sense for you. However, if you see along the way where you're going to need investors for your business, or if you currently have investors who are interested in your business, a better legal structure for you would be a corporation. At this point, I also want to make a delineation for you as well. An S Corp and a C Corp are not legal structures. The corporation is the legal structure. The S Corp or C Corp is a tax designation that you make when you go to get the EIN for your business. And also, I have clients who aren't sure about which legal structure they should take. And I feel if you aren't sure about the legal structure that your business is going to take, you should perhaps start an LLC, and then down the line, if you see the business is changing in a direction where it may need investors, it's easier for you to switch to a corporation than to switch from an LLC to a corporation than from a corporation to an LLC. And I'm going to pause here for a second to make a legal disclaimer. So all the information that's provided here today is for informational purposes only. It is not legal advice. I am a lawyer giving you information. I am not your attorney. An attorney-client relationship exists when we have an engagement agreement together. So I just have to give that disclaimer before we can go any further.
Thank you for the disclaimer, and which is very important. And we'll get into disclaimers and contracts and agreements. I think that's going to be very important. We've seen in this day and age that business records are important, but how important are they? What are some of the factors in legal in keeping business records? Can a small business attorney help or assist in keeping business records for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So first of all, you must keep business records as a business owner. And there are multiple reasons why you're going to need those business records. You may need your business records to get loans, for instance, from the bank. You need your business records for tax reasons, for tax purposes. You're going to need to pull on them. You may need credit cards for the business. You may get partners down the line for the business. Also, you may also get investors. Your business records are absolutely important when it comes to your investors. And in terms of me keeping my records or records for businesses? Absolutely. Whatever work I do for my clients, I also have a copy of those records. So if I draft contracts for my clients, for instance, I have copies of those contracts. If I form companies for my clients, I have those formation documents. If I got an EIN, I have the EIN as well for my clients. And that's just responsible practice as an attorney. But I will only keep those records for a certain amount of time because there are record retention policies for attorneys. There is going to come a point where I have to destroy those records. In some types of law, for instance, criminal or perhaps trust and estate, an attorney needs to keep the records longer. But for corporate law purposes, there is going to come a point where we'll destroy it. But once we have an attorney-client relationship, I do have your business records.
And just to clarify, is that the same thing as a registered agent?
Oh, so a registered agent is something separate. A registered agent is a person who you elect to receive service of process on your behalf. So what does service of process means? If someone sues you, the state in which you have formed your business can send you a copy of the summons and complaint, which means the lawsuit, basically. Summons and complaint is the legal term for what a lawsuit is. So a registered agent is someone who can receive service of process on your behalf. And an attorney absolutely can be your registered agent.
Okay, good. All right. And what are some of the pros and cons in a sole proprietor versus an LLC? I know a number of people start businesses just to get things running, but never go through the official process. So, and then when we look at that, what is like the time frame in terms of switching your business from like one to another? I know we talked about S corp. What about sole proprietors and LLCs?
Also, another great question. A lot of business owners operate their businesses without getting a legal entity around that structure. So, a sole proprietorship is a natural person that owns the assets of the business. A sole proprietorship is not a legal entity, and it is not. There is no document that you file with the state, for instance, to be a sole proprietor. However, if you are doing business other than your name as a sole proprietor, you must, in New York State, you must file a certificate with the county clerk in the county in which the business is being run from. So you, as the owner of the sole proprietorship, you are personally liable for anything the business does. So, for example, if you end up signing a commercial lease in the sole proprietorship's name, if you take out debt in the sole proprietorship's name, if you take out credit cards in the sole proprietorship's name, and you default on the credit card, if you default on the loan, default on the commercial lease, you are personally liable for that default. Whereas, if you had formed a legal structure around your business, such as an LLC, if the LLC signed a commercial lease, if the LLC took out loans, if the LLC took out the credit card and defaulted on all of those things, the creditor or the landlord can only go after the assets of the LLC. They cannot touch your personal assets. So I would tell business owners as soon as possible, spend the cash and create a legal structure around your business. It is important, especially if you're facing the public. You should not be doing business outside of a legal structure. It is not recommended.
So with that being said, what is the process in creating, let's say, a LLC?
Also a good question. So in New York, I'll talk to New York because I'm a New York lawyer, and this is the New York chapter of the National Black Bar. Not Black Bar, that's the law association. The National Black MBA Association. So in New York, in order to form an LLC, what you would do is file an article, what's called an Articles of Organization with the state of New York. You can file it online or you can do it through mail. I believe you can also do it through fax, but I don't have a fax machine, so I don't know. My clients, I don't know how that process works. But when I form companies for my clients in New York State, I do it online, and you pretty much are registered in the state of New York immediately. What New York does, however, and this makes New York very unique from other states, is that New York has what's called a publication requirement. So what does that mean? You have to, within 120 days of forming your LLC, you have to publish a notice within 2 different newspapers in the county in which the business is domiciled, meaning where the business is being run from. You must publish a notice in 2 newspapers for 6 weeks. At the end of that period, you go back to the state and you file a certificate of publication. In all practicality, a lot of business owners do not follow through with the publication requirement, and it's just reality. It's just reality. What does that mean? Essentially, you're suspended from doing business in New York. What does suspension mean? Is New York State gonna come and knock on your door and tell you to stop doing business? Absolutely not, right? If that was the case, the business owners would have gotten a publication requirement. However, let's say your business ends up being a multi-million-dollar business, and 6 years down the line, you want to sue a client who has not paid you your fees. What? Because you didn't do the publication, you can't access the courts in New York. So you can't sue anyone. However, yeah, you can't sue. All is not lost. The courts have consistently held within New York that you can retroactively do your publication requirement. So what I had just explained, even if it's 6 years later, you can go back, do the publication requirement, and then at the end of that requirement, or when you have completed that requirement, you can then go into a court of law in the state of New York and file a lawsuit against someone. That's what it means. I'm not advising anyone to skirt the publication requirement because it is a legal requirement, but in practicality, people don't do it.
So with that being said, if you have an LLC, let's say 6 years as an example, and let's say that that lawsuit is not even in question. However, you still didn't file. So what you're advising is, hey, file just in case of anything. Make sure that you do it because it's the legal requirement, because you don't know the ramifications later on.
Correct. So with publication, absolutely. Go ahead and do the publication requirement within 120 days of filing your articles of organization with the state of New York. Absolutely.
So now the hot topic is something that I learned many years ago. It was a hot topic at the time, and it's still a hot topic now, especially when you watch shows, you learn vicariously through people. The Delaware conversation is always something that comes up, and most people don't understand exactly what that really means. So I have a person here who said, I organized my LLC in Delaware, but plans to do all the business in New York. Is that a mistake? I'm moving my business from Denver to New York, okay? And does it make sense to move it to Delaware? The same thing for New Jersey company that's starting with a storefront in New Jersey. So let's just kind of break this down here. You have a LLC in Delaware that plans to do business in New York. He's moving his business from Denver, Colorado, it looks like, to NYC. Doesn't make sense to move it to Delaware. And then he also gives example of, or she gives an example of a New Jersey business, a storefront, and moving to New York. That's kind of complicated, but let's start with the Delaware question.
Right, Delaware question. I believe the last part is a different question with the storefront, and it looks like it's a different business. But in terms of the Delaware question, again, Norville, you hit the nail on the head. This comes up all the time about Delaware. No, it was not a mistake for you to form your LLC in Delaware. You can do, if you are running the business in New York State, what New York allows you to do is file an application of authority as a foreign LLC to do business in New York State. So it wasn't a mistake. You just have to go through the step of applying for authority to do business in New York. And then you'd have to go through the publication requirement that I just explained. For the person who asked, should I go from Colorado to Delaware? If you're running the business from New York, it doesn't make sense for you, if you have a Colorado company, to be in Delaware to come back to New York. If you're running that business from New York State, you can absolutely, as a Colorado LLC, apply for authority to do business in the state of New York as a foreign company. So don't go to Delaware to come back to New York. Keep your LLC status in Colorado and then apply to do business as a foreign company in the state of New York. And for the New Jersey LLC that has a storefront in New York, same logic applies. If you're a New Jersey LLC, a storefront is clear as day that you're doing business in New York, you should do the application of authority to do business as a foreign LLC in the state of New York.
So that's a lot of legal paperwork. So typically, your firm will handle something like that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now you have a question here, and this is something that is coming up, and I think this is actually something in business that our people really need to go ahead in. As a person that used to be in CPG, what type of business should I create when starting a cosmetic company?
Great question as well. So I'm just, without knowing who the business owner is and without having a further conversation with the business owner, outside of you funding the business yourself, and maybe you do have that money to be funding the business and buying all that pigment and end up being a Fenty Beauty, sure. You can file an LLC, but in practicality, perhaps a cosmetics company is probably going to have investors down the line. Or if not down the line, already has investors now, or investors interested in that company now. If that's the case, you should file a corporation in that instance. So if you have investors, absolutely get a corporation, not an LLC.
Now, why is that? What exactly is the huge difference there? Because from what I understand, and I agree with you, but of course with the LLC, you're going to have a lot of shares. You have to divide shares, but you have members and managers. But is it the flexibility? What exactly is are you honing in on versus like the LLC?
So the LLC actually, first of all, let's take another step back for a second. An LLC is an easier legal structure to have in the sense that there aren't many corporate governance requirements like a corporation has. So with an LLC, you form your LLC, you have an operating agreement, and pretty much you can leave the business alone until something happens. Like you get more, you get partners, or something else occurs in the business. Whereas a corporation, you have multiple corporate governance requirements. You have meetings, you have to take minutes of the meetings, written consents, and the list goes on and on. So generally, again, as I said before, if you have a lifestyle business, LLC is better. For corporations, and especially Delaware corporations, there are advantages to investors and in Delaware. So as an investor, you don't even have to disclose who you are in the state of Delaware. So the state tends to be very attractive the state of Delaware tends to be extremely attractive to investors. Also, Delaware law is very, very sophisticated when it comes on to corporate law, and not even as sophisticated as New York. The laws are more developed. Delaware is definitely a place where investors like, because they don't have to disclose who they are. Also, shares. It's easier to sell shares. So in the LLC context, it's called interest. In a corporation, it's shares. It's easier for you to basically sell shares from a corporation. Not only that, you have different classes of shares in a corporation. So perhaps an investor, you want to give an investor preferred stock as opposed to common stock. And a corporation allows you to have different types of shares, and not just a corporation, a C Corp specifically. An S Corp is just, you're only allowed to have one class. A C Corp, you can have different classes of shares. So that's really one of the main reasons that if you're getting investors, you should absolutely form a corporation.
Now, when starting a company, a lot of people go to, in the healthcare industry, they call it Dr. Google. In this case, this is the Google or the search for legal services. So can you just walk us through, and I experienced this myself, can you walk us through the difference between maybe online legal services or advice versus working with a person such as yourself who's focused on a client?
Thank you for asking that question. Legal, I'm sure folks are talking about like a Legal Zoom or a Rocket Lawyer, one of those types of services. If you are a business owner at the early stages, you should absolutely shy away from that. Why am I saying this? I have had to clean up work from a Legal Zoom / Rocket Lawyer. I'm not going to name who it is. I've had to clean up work from one of those different I guess, websites or legal tools that happen to be out there. Not only that, sometimes you're not even dealing with a lawyer. Like you call LegalZoom and they form your company. It may not even be an attorney that you're dealing with. So you really can't compare the two. Not only that, the same client, I mean, obviously no one knows who it is, the same client, when I looked at the mistake, I literally skimmed the first page of the document and caught the mistake. A first-year associate could have caught the same mistake. But they went to one of these legal services, and whomever it was that drafted the documents for them, they clearly didn't know what they were doing. So it just makes sense for you to have a lawyer on hand who will walk you through the process. And people also think it's really expensive when they think of, I mean, I'm not saying legal services are cheap, please do not get me wrong. But when folks think about lawyers, they think about the $1,000 an hour partner that you know, who bills $1,000 at a large law firm who represents large corporations. If you're a small business owner, chances are there is an attorney who fits your budget. I fit my clients' budgets most times. So it's just about you doing the work, not being necessarily lazy and finding that attorney. Not only that, I have a friend who is in-house counsel at an investor. She works at a family office, and when that family office is going to make investments in founders, the first thing that they look at is the founder's legal documents. And when they see that the founder has gone to a LegalZoom or a Rocket Lawyer or someone like that, they sometimes don't even invest again because they say this founder is not a serious person. Or they reduce the size of the investment that they were going to make in that founder. So it really is imperative that in the early stages of your business, you should consult with a business lawyer.
Well, I think that's very interesting in terms of how a person starts, and then ultimately those decisions that you make early as you start your business can definitely impact you in terms of reputation, brand image. And I think that's very interesting. I think it goes to the next part of our segment here, where we're going to focus on contracts and agreements. And you know, when it comes to contracts, I know that a number of us, and this just goes to, you know, any type of arrangement that you have with someone. You ask someone to do something, they do something, or they don't do something, and then something happens. Whether it's you are left with the bill, you are left with the stain on your face by not providing these services. And it happens to many people, whether it's in life or whether it's in business. So when we look at business ideas, now this is very, very serious, because I'm actually going through this, and I've went through this many, many times. So this is not an issue. But when you look at shopping your ideas, sharing your ideas with potential investors, what is the best legal practice? Should investors, should entrepreneurs be having individuals sign NDAs?
Absolutely. And for folks on this call who aren't sure about what an NDA is, it's a non-disclosure agreement, sometimes called a confidentiality agreement, which basically means that you are exchanging confidential information and on the other end, the other party makes a promise to you that they won't disclose that information for a certain period of time. And there are exceptions to what confidential information is. If it is that you are going to a sophisticated investor, chances are that investor knows what an NDA is, that investor has a legal team to review the NDA, and it won't come as a surprise to the investor. And just think about it. If you don't have someone sign an NDA, you have no legal protection for your business idea. Someone can run away with it because you don't have you have not signed any document with them. You have not gotten a promise in exchange for sharing that information with them. So they can do whatever they so choose. If a situation arises where you can't sign the NDA with the investor, or the investor may refuse to sign the NDA for whatever reason, then what you could think about doing is paring back the information that you're going to share with that investor. So pulling it back a little bit just to ensure that you're not disclosing all, you're disclosing enough, but not all the information that's there, because there's no there you technically don't have any legal protection for your business idea.
You know, when you look at the ideas themselves, you also look at, you said scaling back. I just want to touch on that for a moment. So do they actually have to sign it? And what information in the NDA is actually specific? Should you make it specific? Should it be general? How much details need to be in that NDA? Because you're talking to different people, which can be different investors in different areas. But is it a general NDA that you can use across the board? Or should you make it as specific as possible?
That's a good question, Norville. You can be vague, saying, okay, this is in furtherance of a potential business opportunity or a potential business transaction. You can make it vague. But if you have intellectual property, we'll touch on this a little later on, you do not want to use a generic NDA under any circumstances. You need to beef up that NDA to give your intellectual property more protections. So if you're pitching the idea, there's no IP involved, you can say, we're having a conversation about a potential business opportunity. You can even go as far as saying a potential investment in something. You don't want to, you could name the company, because technically the person has a confidentiality obligation to you once they sign the NDA. So it really is a business judgment at that point in how detailed you want to describe what the confidential information means. You can also say, everything and anything I say to you today or before today is confidential information.
Got it. So now we talked about, now I know we just mentioned potential investors, and this is a question that maybe we could touch on as well, but what are some legal factors in considering in seed funding? We have a lot of businesses, a lot of people who are trying to do stage funding and are looking at opportunities for them to grow their business. So from a legal aspect, what are some suggestions that you have there in regards to the legal factors?
So the person who asked me that question on the seed funding, that's a very complicated question. And first of all, you need a lawyer. Do not go on LegalZoom if you're getting seed funding. There's several considerations. Please stay away. You need a lawyer in that situation. There's several considerations that come into play when you're getting seed funding. For instance, SEC regulations come in, state blue sky laws come in. That means state securities laws come in. Your corporate structure matters when you're getting seed funding. So without knowing more what the person is asking, I can't really go into detail, but whomever asked that question about seed funding on this call, please reach out to me directly. My email is tr@raglanlaw.com. So that's my first initial and last initial at raglanlaw.com. And reach out to me. We can schedule time to speak more. Also, for anyone who's participating on this call, I am being very kind with my time because it's the National Black MBA. So anyone else who is on this call who has further questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me directly through email, and we can schedule some time if you have more questions to ask.
And we'll definitely make sure we get that information out to our audience as well. And the person who asked this question in regards to the legal factors, let me just say this. When you look at your business plan, you look at your ideas, you understand the entire universe. What that means from a universe perspective is how big the market is. So based on how big the market is and based on your resources, you know the different stages that you probably need to look at as relates to funding. And as you're looking to scale your business, there are various steps that you're going to have. And I can definitely connect with you regarding that in terms of how to set it up, because here at bccelerator, we do focus on business plans for that particular purpose as well. So when you look at funding in itself, you're going to look at your resources, you're going to look at your business partners, and you're going to look at how much capital can you bring in and how can you stretch the debt to equity ratio ultimately. That beginning stage there, along with your seed funding, needs to be clear in your business plan so your lawyer is able to now dictate these are the different stages that you're probably going to have, and ultimately this is how you're going to structure your business. because you have a number of shares that you're going to allocate, and there's going to be a number of shares that you're going to keep separately. But there's going to come a time where you're going to get an investor that's going to buy out those additional shares. It can reduce the amount of shares that you have, but also can possibly knock out an angel investor that invested X amount of dollars with X amount of shares. So that's something definitely would connect with a lawyer about. And from a business perspective, you definitely want to ensure as you're creating your business plan that it's clearly communicated not only to your partners, but also the future investors. This is where I'm looking for you to come in. And this is the buyout opportunity that I'm going to provide to you. If it's $100, you're going to buy them out for $1,000. Okay? And this is what you're going to get paid in perpetuity or whatever your legal agreement is going to be. So definitely that's a very, very serious discussion. And that's where you see a lot of problems, especially in the beginning. So there's more that I could touch on that as an area that we're gonna talk about in the upcoming weeks regarding seed funding and crowdfunding, things of that nature. So this is something that is also a big topic that has come in my direction as well. How to partner with companies. So from a MWB perspective, you are trying to get federal contractors. And there are contractors that then give you, one is a prime, you're a lower company, you're probably a subprime contractor. So a subprime contractor, you're looking to partner with other companies to get on a contract, right? And they probably need you because you provide the service. Or you have a particular item that you sell or a particular idea that you have, and you want to partner with another company to go ahead and do a joint venture for a specific time, or maybe possibly a merger. What are some of the things that you can do to protect yourself that doesn't include your IP being compromised in the process? I know you understand this from a legal perspective, from a corporate perspective, because such as what are some of the things that you need to factor in terms of some of the things that you're going to do to protect yourself from a IP perspective, and your IP won't be compromised?
Sure. So even before, again, the NDA plays a role in every aspect of business, not just with investors, but even potential business partners. You can have that potential business partner in that situation sign an NDA as well, or meaning business partner, meaning another company that you're partnering with. You can have that person sign an NDA as well. And if there is IP involved, as I said before, you cannot, or you should, I won't say cannot, because people or business owners choose to do what they want to do, but you should not send a boilerplate NDA in any situation where your IP is going to be shared. You need to beef up that section. You need to add protections for your IP. You need to say nothing herein is, do not interpret this as me licensing any of my intellectual property to you. I'm not assigning any rights to my intellectual property to you. And the list goes on and how that provision in the NDA would be worded. In terms of the agreement that you enter into with the other business partner, you would incorporate the terms of that NDA into the agreement that you sign with the other company. So you're gonna, put something to the effect that, confidentiality, we're incorporating the terms of the NDA that we signed on July 20th, 2020. And you incorporate the NDA that way. In terms of partnerships, depending on the size of the partnership, you can do a JV agreement, what's called a joint venture agreement, depending on the size of the transaction, and the same, you add the confidentiality provisions there. In terms of the prime and sub, I believe you can add sections that say that you're working as the sub within the end contract with the client. So that's a totally different scenario. But if it is just a company and a company partnering together to do business with another company as the end client, then you can do a JV agreement, or you could also do what's called a services agreement, which is basically expressing that, you as one of the companies is providing a service to the other company, which would in turn provide a service to the client. So there are multiple ways in which you can handle this situation. But if you're trying to protect your IP, you should have the other business sign an NDA, a standalone NDA. If that's not possible, you must have a conflict provision, which adds additional protections for the IP in there as well.
So from a strategy perspective, let me just go back to, and this kind of goes into business formation and also just contracting itself. So when we look at it from a strategy perspective, I have a person here who has a what's the strategy of having 2 LLCs or corporations for profit and revenue distribution for tax benefits. So it looks like the person has 2 businesses and they want to be able to distribute the revenue in such a way that it benefits their taxes at the end. Is that typical? I know from a nonprofit to a profit side, I understand that piece of it, but from a company to company, maybe having a holding company, how would you legally advise in that perspective?
So that's actually a tax question. And I'm happy that person asked that question. So just as it is important for you to have a lawyer at the onset, you also should have an accountant, a CPA, at the onset of your business. That is a tax question, and I actually know a very good CPA. So that person, you can reach out to me as well, and I will put you in touch with that CPA, but that's definitely a tax question.
Good.
I won't pretend to be an accountant. I know my limitations.
So in terms of contracting, how do you establish what's called like an airtight contract? And for our audience there, explain what that means, because many business owners don't necessarily know what that means.
So an airtight contract means that the contract is legally enforceable. So I've actually seen contracts that are not contracts, or what people think are contracts are not contracts. Another scenario where you need a lawyer for an airtight contract. There are certain terms that need to be in contracts. Not only that, there are certain situations that require different types of agreements. And if you are in a situation where your business is at the stage where you're dealing with sophisticated clients, your client is going to know that the contract isn't real. Again, because the client has a legal team. So they're going to know that, okay, this person is not legit as yet. So you must pair with a lawyer in order to get the contracts. And the reverse is true. When someone gives you a contract to sign, you don't under any circumstances want to sign any contract without consulting with a lawyer. I've seen it oftentimes where there's something called indemnification provisions in these contracts, which literally can bankrupt a business. And business owners don't know this. You are literally agreeing to put your business in bankruptcy and you have no clue. You need to have a lawyer review the contracts that come in from your clients, because again, indemnification tends to be pretty common in these contracts, and in most cases have no place in the contract based on the service or the products that you're providing to the client. So definitely partner with an attorney in order to review those contracts for you, because again, saving yourself the cost at the onset, so in the long run, you don't end up having made a very expensive decision or misdecision, which is not a word. you know what I mean.
Yes. So what are some of the, when hiring a freelancer, a 1099 individual, what are some of the requirements in hiring a freelancer for like a small tech startup under LLC? A lot of individuals outsource certain parts of their project to start a business. So what are some of the requirements that you would be looking at as a lawyer?
First of all, you need to ensure that the freelancer is clear that this is not an employee-employer relationship. The states are both state and federal law, they're very strict when it comes down to treating people like employees or treating people like contractors who end up being employees. So you have to be very clear in the relationship that you have with the freelancer per se. I typically advise my clients to enter into what's called an independent contractor agreement with freelancers. In that situation, you would lay out as clear as day that this is an independent contractor relationship. No employee-employer relationship exists between us. Do not misinterpret this to be that. And of course, the language is beefed up significantly for the client. Also, there are situations in tech where you may ask a freelancer to do something that could involve your intellectual property, or intellectual property could be born from that situation with the freelancer. You also want to make sure that whatever work the freelancer is doing is called what's called work for hire. It's a legal term. And in that situation, you own the rights of the project. So you own the IP that's born from the project. Or if the person or the freelancer ends up owning it, you ensure in the contract that that person signs all the rights over to you. So I work with my business owners all the time when it comes to independent contractors. And this is pretty common for business owners to be working with freelancers. You must have that independent contractor agreement in place because, again, the IP could be someone else's at the end of this. So it's good practice to have that.
So one thing that did happen, and this goes into COVID, and unfortunately, COVID has affected many industries. As being part of National Black MBA, there are a number of events that we had prior to COVID in terms of in-person events, and we look forward to having those events soon. We have a gentleman who actually who was asked a question to the audience, to the panel discussion, to the panel, and ultimately revealed that because of his manufacturing firm, a contract that he signed up, or a firm, a manufacturing location in China, when he was looking to get his garments, his apparel ready for Fashion Week, because of COVID, they were not able to supply all of the various items that he had ready to order for his line. And we end up finding out there were a number of people who were impacted by COVID, specifically as it relates to the fashion industry. And then, of course, it expanded to anything that was manufactured in China, especially during that time, was impacted. When you look at international business, what are some of the factors that entrepreneurs need to consider in terms of outsourcing, looking at opportunities to either buy product, get product in China, have things manufactured in China, or even if you look at business in the Caribbean, which we're going to get into, I'm looking forward to that. It's a big announcement. But when we look at opportunities for the Caribbean and opportunities for trade, what are some of the aspects that you need to consult with your lawyer about as relates to doing any business internationally?
So I without knowing more information, I hope that, I hope, or it doesn't sound like this is the case, that he would have signed a contract that has what's called a force majeure clause in the contract. So what does that mean? It means that in the event that an act of God occurs, that's a legal term, meaning tornado, hurricane, government orders, in our case today, a global pandemic, for example, it dictates, a force majeure clause dictates how the parties act if an act of God occurs. So a pandemic occurred. That is clear textbook act of God. A force majeure clause would lay out the particular types of acts of God. So a pandemic would need to be listed there. And what the force majeure clause does is it dictates how each party acts in the event of an act of God. So had that person had a force majeure clause in his or his contract, he would have been able to know how his relationship would have gone forward. So is it that the parties or the contract automatically terminates and then he can go, he's free to go ahead and find a new vendor? Or does it mean that the parties perform later on? In this case, he needed it for a certain period of time, so that clearly wouldn't have worked. His option probably would have been to terminate the contract or get a refund. That should have been laid out in the contract. And for my clients now who are drafting contracts, I automatically add a force majeure clause in those contracts because of what we're experiencing right now. And it is not a get out of the contract free clause. Do not misinterpret it as such. It is not. The clause dictates exactly how the parties are going to act. So whether it means the contract terminates, you get a refund, give me back my money so I can go ahead and find another vendor to provide me with whatever it is that I need. But the contract dictates how that works. And it's the same. So trade is something more complex that we can discuss offline, but it's the same if you're doing business in the Caribbean. I would expect that you have contracts in place. You cannot be doing business on a handshake. If we are well past that level of, you should not be doing business on a handshake. That is.
You saw what happened when we made a handshake agreement. Next thing you know, 400 years later,
Exactly. Exactly.
I thought we were going for a boat ride, but unfortunately, not.
Precisely, right? So you should not be doing business on handshakes. You need contracts in place in terms of trade. That's a different area of law and more complex that we could get into more at a later date.
So with that saying, before we close off here, I want to also just understand working with, and this goes into insurance, and this also goes into protection, things of that nature. How do you work with some of, and I look at it from a cross-functional perspective. You know, we're corporate, cross-functional is always a common term, but the people that you work with from a industry perspective, whether it's accountants, insurance agents, what are your relationship are like with working with them as you work with your clients,
So
to make sure they're protected in other areas?
right. So most certainly, I have a CPA who I work with consistently with my clients because tax questions come up often. And as I said before, I know my limitations. I'm not even pretending to act like I know tax. I don't. So I definitely partner with an accountant. Same with an insurance agent. If someone needs insurance, there's someone who I know. So, of course, as a professional who advises businesses, I do have a litany of other service providers that I would be partnering with in order to refer my client to.
And again, that's also important for the audience to know, especially when you're working with professionals. Don't think that one professional can handle it all, because they're not going to lie to you. If they can't do it, they can't do it. What you need to know is when you work with a Toneille, it's going to be important to know that you're also getting a vast amount of resources that are going to help support you as well, which is very, very important. We don't work in, individuals don't, we shouldn't be working in the vacuum. As you can see here, it's very important to for you to look at your business holistically and make sure you get the right people involved. I just want to make sure I highlight that. So intellectual property, you did touch on this. Let's go to the next part here. So, and this is a question that I know from a long time ago why this is important, but how to make your make a seal for your brand. A person is looking at the intellectual property and looking to make sure they're protected. How do they make sure they get a trademark for their business, and what does that process really look like?
So, great question. First of all, do you even have a brand? That's the first one.
Come to me. We could definitely help you with that in terms of creating your brand identity, making sure that your value proposition meets your purpose, your mission, and ultimately brings you profit, which is a whole other conversation. But definitely, you should definitely come to me about establishing your brand, not just a logo, but what your brand really, really means.
Right.
So yes.
I like that plug, Norville. But even before you go to Norville, you need to ensure that no one owns the name or the logo that you are trying to start. I've seen it before where business owners spend all this money, all this time in trying to create this perfect product. They do their coloring, testing, market research, all that comes into developing the brand, and they get a cease and desist letter from the owner of the brand. So, right, you have to be very careful in this process before you start naming your business, before you start developing anything seriously. When it comes onto your business, you need to run a trademark search to ensure no one else has that name or has that logo. And it's pretty straightforward for you to get an attorney to run the trademark search, because it would be a crying shame for you to go through all of that work and get a cease and desist letter. The owner of Stitch Fix got a cease and desist. The name that she chose before for her business, someone owned the trademark. So she had to stop and completely rebrand and put her business out there as Stitch Fix. So it's a cautionary tale that you must do the research first before you start developing any of your products. So after you've conducted the research and you're in the clear, no one else owns the rights to that name, you can file an application with the USPTO, which is the United States Patents and Trademark Office, And I would advise you to, of course, partner with a lawyer. Some people do it alone, but if you're not clear on the process, I advise that you get an attorney. Trademark law is very specific. It gets complicated. One of my clients right now actually is going through the process with someone else. She did it, I guess, some non-lawyer has some trademark situation going on. And clearly she's in a problem. So definitely work with someone when you're ready to create or ready to file a trademark application with the USPTO. Also, the same holds true for your registration with the state. So again, registering the name and someone else has the trademark, you want to make sure you don't run into that issue and that problem. And when you start the trademark application process with the USPTO, I would do a more comprehensive search of that trademark. I'd use a third party to do an actual in-depth trademark search in the whole world to ensure that no one else is using that name or logo.
So just to add to that, many of you are coming from corporate, have a lot of fantastic ideas. You've been working on this project for a very, very long time. I have actually seen many people have to change the way they change their name, change their branding, change their branding elements, even their value proposition, too close to this particular product, too close to something very similar. So I highly recommend that. In addition to that, you do not want to get inundated with a number of individuals contacting you when you do register from the patent office. I've also seen from the people that I've worked with, when they look to kind of do it on their own, they're not sure if the mail that they're receiving is from the patent office or it's from some attorney that finds out that you have filed this particular patent or trademark. So it's very, very important that you reach out to a lawyer in regards to that, because it can save you a lot of headaches. So absolutely. So now, in terms of protecting your invention from the patent office, so what are some of the steps that you can do before getting approval? So a lot of people say they have a patent pending or they applied for a patent, but as I mentioned before, these people are now shopping their idea to investors as well while this process is happening. So what are some of the things that they can do to protect themselves specifically for the idea of their invention as it relates to their patent before they actually get approval?
So back to the conversation we were having before. So for folks who aren't aware what IP is, so IP, intellectual property, encompasses trademarks, copyrights, and patents. Trademarks, that's a name, logo. Copyrights, that's protection for, let's say, a documentary, movies, music, books. Patents, that's protection for ideas, as Norville just said. So for patents, in the law, there is a specific attorney that does patent law. I can't practice patents. For instance, you have to take what's called a patent bar. So for whomever asks, you have to take a patent bar. You have to be licensed in order to even go in front of the USPTO as someone who represents somebody applying for a patent. So to the person who asked that question about the patents, I strongly suggest that first of all, you don't do this on your own. You need to consult with a patent lawyer. I can find that for you, again, because I'm partnering with the National Black MBA Association. I will, put you in touch with a patent lawyer. I do know one, an excellent patent lawyer, actually. And I will give you her information so you can contact her. A patent, you shouldn't be doing this alone. That's something that requires a patent lawyer. I am not one. I'm a business lawyer, and you have to take a patent bar in order to be a patent lawyer and have science background to even be eligible for the patent bar.
So we have a couple more questions here. If you have time for maybe about 4 more questions here, I want to be respectful of your time as we look at business resources. How should a person if a person works for a lawyer? How should they be getting notices? I think I can answer this question as well. How to get resources regarding to business resources as they become available? Can a lawyer update you on that? Is it something that lawyers provide, that you provide? And I can also answer that as well.
Absolutely. So there's SBS, or I'm thinking, which is New York City Small Business Services. Who else? EDC, that's Economic Development Corporation. SBA, I know, has resources. We NYC as well, which is a division of SBS for women entrepreneurs. I know they have resources and will update you periodically. Norville, can you add to any other resources? That's typically not something a lawyer would do. We wouldn't send you business resources, for instance. That's atypical of an attorney to do.
So to be honest with you, when we look at it from a business perspective, I mean, it's really the three different areas. So you start with the SBA, and then everything trickles down. Then you go to you go to the ESD, which is the Empire State Development Corporation, which is in New York. You can also look for the equivalent in New Jersey as well. There's a number of nonprofits that actually give you those resources as well from New York City. You're going to look at NYC. You're going to look at Small Business Services, Long Island. You're going to look at it per county as well for Nassau and for Suffolk, for Westchester, and also the White Plains. You're going to look at it specifically for your county. But the guiding principle that I believe is that you should start with the federal government, especially as it relates to PPP. I know that's something that we're not covering here as it relates to loans. If you look at it from a federal aspect, you'll see how it trickles down. Since we live in New York City, and New York City is such a big area, New York City also covers northern New Jersey and also covers parts of Long Island. Keep in mind, if you are doing business in New York City, you're going to get a lot of that information, regardless of if you're in Florida, if you're in California, wherever you're actually doing business is the area that you need to focus on. And we can get you those resources based on where you actually do business. The same thing applies if you look at it from Georgia, parts of Georgia, Atlanta. You're going to look at it specifically because those rules are going to change. Those are people got to light to the federal government first as a shining light. The only suggestion I do have is when you look at nonprofit organizations, they're not as fast to update their information as relates to what they're receiving because it's trickle-down effect. So again, I would start with always federal, then state, then city. City will also include your county as well to make sure you get updated as well. Let's see here. Okay. Personal finances. I think we kind of touched on this, but from a personal finances perspective, let's say you have a lien that's given to you because of parking tickets or Easy Pass or other areas such as things that a bill that you didn't pay or something like that. How can that affect? Can these creditors go after your business assets or put a lien against your business as well?
So, not that I'm aware of. A business is a separate legal entity. A business is a separate person from you in your individual capacity. So I wouldn't expect that it would be affecting your business unless I'm misinterpreting something from the question. It's pretty straightforward. So again, this is why I implore business owners to create a legal structure around yourself or to create a legal structure around your business. So I wouldn't expect that the assets of the business would be impacted, or I'm not certain it would impact the assets of the business.
Oh, it looks like maybe, and maybe it's not clear, but maybe if you are a sole proprietor and you're running a business, and since you're a sole proprietor, can liens on you personally affect your sole proprietorship in terms of going after that? Maybe you can have someone, and I would say if you're there, please follow up, and we can definitely help you get that question answered for you. Okay, what is the best way to offer ownership to employees? I think this is a great question. So you either have money to pay them or you don't, but you want to be able to give them equity. So what are your thoughts regarding that, and legally, how would you approach that?
So first and foremost, you have to check your corporate structure. So the easiest way for you to give compensation to employees, outside of obviously paying them, is through shares or stock. The term is used synonymously. And you would basically, issue stock to the employee, and of course you're not going to have it vest right away. You're going to have the stock vest over time, so it incentivizes the employee to stay with you. That's the best way I can think of, is through stock. That's how you would compensate them outside of pay.
So let's just say, and in some cases, you work, and based on your work here, we're going to give you 10% equity. And if this continues to grow, if I understand this correctly, continues to grow, we can raise it up to 12% equity at whatever rate that's going to be at that particular time. Is that a good understanding of that? Audience?
I would think so. Yeah, you can. And again, even when you're issuing stock in the company, I'm gonna, take a detour for a second. When you issue stock, you can do so, but of course you have to go through the necessary corporate governance requirements first. You have to get the board to sign off on this. You have to get, if not, through a meeting, through written consent of the board. So yes, it can be done. And even, again, whenever you're issuing shares, that's something that the board has to approve. So I would think if it needs to increase to 12%, that's something that can be done.
Okay. Now, just to our audience, we have a couple more moments here. We're here with Toneille Raglan, who is the founding attorney of Raglan Law, who's at a location that we're not going to disclose at this moment. But I know that location is a very safe location, and I know most of us would love to probably be at that disclosed location.
Norville, you make it sound like I'm in witness protection. But I wouldn't be able to drive.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, in some cases, for some people, it's good for them to be witness protection. But I have a last question here, then we'll get to your closing statements here. So from a counter perspective, I think we kind of talked about this. As relates to legal permits, ordinances, and updates with the government, I think we made it clear. Not something that you would do in terms of provide a calendar. But from a legal perspective, do you look at it from a legal deadline perspective? Do you actually do that from your services? So in terms of permits, yes. And it would depend on what the business is. So whomever asked, let me know. I don't know if you own a restaurant or a beauty salon, for instance. That clearly would be two separate permits. So yes, I would have to talk to that person more in order to find out what exactly the business does. Okay. And then from a service perspective, is it typical for attorneys to release their fees? What are some of the legal fee structures that you have? Something that you do with your clients on an individual basis? Can you touch on that for our audience that wants to possibly retain you for various services? So in terms of my fees, of course, I typically work on a flat fee structure, which I think works for most business owners. I think that's best. Instead of you having me work hourly, that could be a nightmare for some people. But I would talk to whomever. It's not that it's my fees are competitive, put it that way. But we can definitely talk through what those fees would look like. I do offer fee arrangements if the business owner is unable to pay me the flat fee upfront. But that's, of course, if you can pay the fee, pay the fee. But if you're in a situation where you can't pay the legal fee upfront, I definitely will work with that business owner on an overtime basis, basically, where we would set out when you would pay the balance of the fee. Okay. Got it. Now, from a question perspective, we have another question in the queue here. So, can a person run an e-commerce business in New York and sell through Shopify to customers in multiple states? Yes. Yes, you can. Okay. Yes, you can. So, that's the thing. And you'd be collecting, I believe, sales tax. Again, another CPA question. But in terms of a legal structure standpoint, you can absolutely run an e-commerce business that's domiciled in one state and sell to customers in all 50 states. That's perfectly fine. I believe
If you collect state tax, you're supposed to pay it on behalf of the customer, I believe. But anyway, short answer is yes. If you have a company in New York and you want to sell to customers in all 50 states, you can absolutely do so.
And then just remember, from a tax purposes, you want to make sure you consult with a CPA as you are collecting taxes in the county that they are actually domiciled at. So that's going to be something that you want to make sure you line up, which there are a lot of rules to that. So I want to make sure that you look at it from that perspective to make sure you don't put yourself in a bind. So in terms of last comments here, again, I want to thank you so much, Toneille, for this time. There's a couple of the questions here, but what are some of you are entrepreneur and you work corporate. Let me just get this perspective from you. What are some of the drivers? I know you mentioned it before, but what are some of the benefits of you being an entrepreneur now as opposed to working corporate law?
I can't even explain. It's I felt like I won the lotto. I have freedom, autonomy. I set my schedule. I go at my own pace. But again, I knew I was gonna do this before, and I stayed in corporate America because the reality is, like a lot of us, I had to work. I had to work, and I had to get money in order to support myself. So I had to work for a certain period of time, but I always had my eye on the end goal, which was to leave corporate. And because I had been putting things in place over time, I came to the point where I could leave corporate. But if this is what you want to do, meaning if it is that you want to go down the entrepreneurial route, do it. My advice to you is, don't ever not do it, because you will end up with regrets in this life. You don't want to be on your deathbed and say, I wish I had tried that business. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back. If you so choose. Obviously, you can figure out a different business venture. But definitely, if entrepreneurship is what you want to do, just pull the trigger and do it.
Now, for our audience here, what are some of the reasons why, and I'm going to recap here, but what are some of the reasons why, again, remind us exactly why you should be looking at a lawyer for a lot of these services, especially you're looking to start or either grow your business?
Cost. So you don't want to make costly mistakes early. I saw it with one of my clients. Because she chose to be cheap, sorry to say that, or she chose to be cheap on legal. She wasn't cheap in other aspects of her business. But because she chose to be cheap in legal, it ended up costing her thousands of dollars down the line for a lawyer to fix the issue. Had she gone to a lawyer to begin with, she wouldn't have been in this position. So I implore you, and I even heard this in a We NYC program from another business owner, an entrepreneur. She said, the two things you must have on hand as a business owner when you start is a lawyer and an accountant. It's not something that's negotiable. So definitely take the cost from another part of your business and pay an attorney to do it right the first time, so you don't end up in problems. And same, a business should not be Google lawyering. As you said, Norville, Google doctoring. Your clients are going to know that you did it, especially if you have sophisticated clients. Your clients are going to know that you went to Google to get this contract for them, for instance. They're going to know. And the same holds true if they give you a contract. As I said before, you need a lawyer to review it, because you could be signing up to bankrupt your business. So just to anything legal related, you need to get a lawyer, and you should not be making legal decisions on behalf of your business. You are the business owner. You also should know your limitations. You're smart enough to know what you don't know.
And for our audience, just remind our audience how they can get in contact with you. We'll send it out to them, but just let them know how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. So you can email me. That's actually the best way to reach me. Through email, it's TR, which is my first initial and last initial, at raglanlaw.com. That's RAGLAN law.com. raglanlaw.com. Very easy. There's no D in my last name for folks to know. Also, you can call, or actually my office number also receives text because we're, of course, mobile in this digital world now. It's 646, I forgot my office number, 817-5580. I need to come back. So that's 646-817-5580. You can also go to my website, which is raglanlaw.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Raglan Law. So those are the ways that you can find me.
So on behalf of National Black MBA Metro New York Chapter and bccelerator, we want to thank Toneille Raglan for this opportunity to connect with her. This Q&A session is very important to not only our members, but also our network itself. We want to thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to our members getting in contact with you, but also there's opportunities that we're going to talk about in the future where we're going to have Toneille back on, and some things that I think you're going to be very excited about. So please, thank you so much. Let's give Toneille a round of applause.
And thank you for having me, Norville. I appreciate being part of of this Entrepreneurial Mondays. Definitely appreciate it, and I appreciate partnering with your organization as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Yes.
So for our audience here, this was the first event that we had in the second half of the year. We want to ensure that as we look at programming for the next 6 months, that we are providing the services for you, and more importantly, timely services for you. So the Q&A session is just another part of, we want to make sure that the resources and also the information is there, and again, it's timely. We also want to also talk about what's going to happen for the second half of the year, when we look at Entrepreneurial Mondays, as we look at 2020. So in 2 weeks, we're going to launch our business development workshop for a number of entrepreneurs who are looking to establish their business plan, not only for the purposes of having it internally, but also to ensure that they have something documented that they can use to speak to investors, lenders, to also look to how they're going to start their businesses. This workshop is going to be a 3-part workshop. And I'm going to be the instructor, Norville Barrington. I'm going to be the instructor of this 3-part workshop. Part 1 is going to focus on how to create a business concept using sound industry and market research. A lot of us have ideas, but how do you actually make it to a business concept? That's the first part that we're going to focus on, which is going to start on August the 3rd. The second part of this workshop is going to focus on how we look at now creating a value proposition. Now that you have your concept, what is the sales, the advertising, the marketing structure? What are some of the things that you need to do in order to flesh out your business proposition, but also how to look at how you align your business and services with other individuals in the market. And the third part is going to be the startup and forecasting piece. That piece is going to be critical because that's going to highlight exactly how much money you're going to need, not only short term, but what your cash flow is going to need to be for the next 5 years. It's also going to include contingency plans as well that you're going to be able to specifically articulate how much money you need to start up, how much money you need to go ahead and make sure you have cash flow, but also how much are you going to make. Ultimately, we're in business to make a profit. And this 3-part series is going to ensure that as you're looking to get your idea from concept into innovation, and ultimately to a place where you're now have a business plan, that you can ensure that you can go to various vendors, various lenders, and properly articulate exactly what your plan is, but more importantly, how you plan to make money. We believe from a National Black MBA Metro New York Chapter perspective and from the bccelerator, we want to ensure that you have all the right resources you need, and have a business plan is critical. We also understand that most businesses fail because they do not have a plan, and most businesses cannot get capital because they don't have a plan as well. So this is going to be very critical. So we're going to start this series on August the 3rd. At 6 o'clock, we'll send information regards to that. I'm very excited about this. And we're looking forward to sharing with you some tips and some traits on how you can develop your plan and how we can assist in that. Another opportunity that we have here that I'm happy to announce is that our Entrepreneurship Accelerator Summit is going to be back in 2020. So in October, we're going to have part 2, or volume 2 of our Entrepreneurship Accelerator. This is going to be a virtual experience, but we are going to create the experience in such a way where you are getting the resources you need. And we've broken up our programming where we're going to specifically have dedicated sessions for entrepreneurs, dedicated sessions for small businesses, and then dedicated sessions specifically for people who just have an idea. There are going to be various levels in teaching by our instructors, which is going to go across from insurance to finance to marketing to real estate to legal as well. And we're going to bring some experts that are going to help you out the process. As you well know, from many events that we've had here, we focus on making sure that we are teaching and keep providing information to you to ensure that you are developing your businesses in such a way where, one, you are seeing businesses launch, two, you're profitable, and then three, it's sustainable. We're here to transfer generational wealth, and this is we believe that this event is going to help in that. And I'm looking forward to announcing that that's going to be led by our wonderful team, including Zoe Blackwood, Latoya Niles, that are going to be part in leading that effort from National Black MBA Metro New York chapter. And we're going to have a special announcement of our keynote speaker as well. So looking forward to that. For those of you who attended last year, we're going to make the experience even better. And we're going to make sure you get the resources that you definitely need as well. Along with that, we do have another announcement as well. And this is going to be something that I'm very excited about. We're going to start a series entitled Doing Business in the West Indies. This 7-part series is going to highlight how to actually do business in the Caribbean islands and the West Indies. And what does that really mean? Some people have a misconception of what the Caribbean is versus the West Indies. What does it mean to be part of CARICOM? What does it mean to be part of various territories? This 7-part series is going to highlight various countries and not only how to start your business, but what does it mean for you, for a person who is in the United States and is looking to start international business in the Caribbean. There are a lot of information and a lot of misconceptions, and we're going to get authorities from the federal government of these respective countries who are going to walk us through the process of not only how to start a business in these various countries, but more importantly, what industries are the best industries to look at trade, investment, e-commerce, and what does that mean for you as a individual from Guyanese descent, as Guyana being the only English-speaking country in South America. I'm proud to know that the investment that my parents made to bring me to Canada, down to the United States, is now proving dividends. I know a number of you from various countries in the Caribbean want to know how can you invest into the countries of your origin, of your lineage. And this series is going to be very critical, especially as a part of the Metro New York chapter, National Black MBA, the biggest hotspot for all West Indian people and Caribbean people in the world outside of the Caribbean. So this is going to be something that I'm very proud to announce. There are going to be, again, some other announcements that we're going to make, and we're going to announce the official start date of this series. And it's going to be very intense. It's going to be very exciting, but we're also going to answer some critical questions on how you can play a part in that. So stay tuned. For those of you who are looking to become a member of National Black MBA, please visit NYBLACKMBA.org for membership. We get more information and be part of our listserv where we'll be able to send you information regarding many events that we have from National Black MBA perspective. And again, from holistically from a chapter perspective, we also want to announce that on this Thursday, Andrew Hamilton will be leading Rewriting Your Financial Future. That's going to be sponsored by National Black MBA from our headquarters. I want to thank Chuck Roberts for building the infrastructure and working with NASDAQ and many other individuals to help build this. Without his critical work, we will not be able to do this. So we want to make sure that as we're looking at financial literacy throughout the United States and also around the world, that we're providing the right resources that are needed in order to ensure that you as an individual have a sound financial plan, but more importantly, your credit and how you build up your financial equity is in place. So Andrew Hamilton will host our national conversation, which is going to be rewriting our financial history, financial future, which is going to be this Thursday. Also want to announce from a chapter perspective, Alicia Sluggs, Deanna Phoenix will be leading our Your MBA, Your Future. That's going to start back in about a week or two. We're going to announce the dates of that, and they have a number of events that are going to kick off. That's going to focus on MBA candidates, especially at this time where MBA candidates are looking to get their figure out what their full-time opportunities are going to be, and as individuals are looking to approach school and education, what does it mean with COVID? For individuals that are looking to receive their MBA or higher education, what does that mean for them going forward? What future opportunities are going to come into place? We're also going to highlight that. Career Anderson is going to lead a professional development series, and we have a number of companies who are looking to hire as well, which also is going to lead to our virtual MBA conference, which is going to be from a virtual career fair, which is going to be September the 1st. So more announcements to come from a chapter perspective. And again, from a national perspective, looking forward to our national conference, which will be virtually, which is September 23rd to the 25th. More information on that will be on our website as well. You can visit our chapter website for national information as well at NYBLACKMBA.org. And you get more information regarding national events as well. So on behalf of National Black MBA Metro New York chapter, my name is Norville Barrington, also the founder of bccelerator, Accelerating Black Entrepreneurship. I want to thank Toneille Raglan for not only her kind comments, but also the great insight that she was able to bring in providing information to us as small business owners. And you're going to see her again very soon as we continue to work together and provide small business with the resources that they need. Have a wonderful evening. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on August the 3rd when we start a business planning workshop on how you can develop your small business plan. My name is Norville Barrington. Have a wonderful evening. Look forward to catching up with you very soon. And by the way, as I go, I also want to thank George Satinas for launching our business of medicine as well. Look out for more announcements regarding George's Community Conversations, which is going to be a huge topic that we're looking forward to bringing in the upcoming future. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.